Welcome to NFL Daily, where we love saying John Carney's name in the newsroom. If you get that one, you're one of us. I'm Gregg Rosenthal in the Chris Wesseling podcast studio, alongside my friend Patrick Claybon, joined by Nick Shook in Cleveland. It never fails, Patrick, when they say, oh, it's a bad slate this weekend, not a great 10 a.m. slate, then you get crazy endings.
Crazy is an understatement. Right. It's bananas. We're talking about what game I want, and it's like, oh, Greg, I'll take this Dallas game because I'm going to laugh at the Cowboys. But it was not me who was laughing, nor the Commanders.
No, that was very smart to take that Cowboys game. And Shooky, it's really the theme of the whole week. You actually went to the game in the snow in Cleveland. That set the tone. People thinking that's 2-8 versus 8-2. That wasn't going to be good. But you were there having the time of your life and just living in the snow for your Browns. Was that better than a playoff? Almost better than a playoff win. Who needs playoff wins when you can have a night like that in the snow? Sorry.
No, but it was probably a top 3 football experience. I'll tell you
that.
There
it is.
That's what I was kind of getting at. That each Sunday or Thursday night, you never know exactly what that game is going to give you. And it's been a tough season for Browns fans and certainly Cowboys fans. But today, you got a great experience. I'm sure there were some Cowboys fans in the crowd. We're going to start with that game. And yes, a 2-play sequence that Commanders fans will be remembering in January if they do not make the playoffs.
Here's the snap. Dallas just brings 3. He's able to step up. Lobs one over to Terry McLaurin, is open. 45-50, 45-40. Turns on the Jets. He's gone. Touchdown. Touchdown, Washington. They've done it again. Another miracle in Landover.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Do you believe in miracles?
Oh,
no.
Oh, no. Shane Daniels does it again.
Oh.
Wow! Unbelievable! 86-yard touchdown pass to Terry McLaurin! Oh! Wow! I don't know what he's announcing, and I don't care. There's 21 seconds left. We got an extra point. The game is not tied. Austin Seibert has to make this. He's already missed an extra point.
Moments before disaster.
Oh, foreshadowing.
It's berserk. Snap. Low. Trustway gets it down.
No.
Cyber's kick. Bad. Freaking snap. Bad snap. A bad snap. They got the hold down. It's Seibert. Missed it left.
Oh, Bram Weinstein. Man. WBIG. London Fletcher. The ups, the downs. Listening to the excitement. Yes, when Terry McLaurin catches an 86-yard touchdown pass on a 1-play drive with under 30 seconds to go in the game. It was like listening to a horror movie where you know the monster or the killer's right around the corner. And yes, it was that bad snap and bad kick by Austin Seibert. We missed a few kicks on this day, so maybe it wasn't just the bad snap. Giving me memories of John Carney. Do you know what game I'm referring to here? Back in, who knows, the early 2000s when the Saints had the River City Relay, whatever it was, the crazy game against the Panthers where they got the touchdown at the end of the game, one of the best finishes in NFL history. But then John Carney missed the extra point. That's what it reminded me of.
Eerily similar. And perhaps, I think Devery Henderson kind of fades into existence. Terry McLaurin will be remembered a lot better than in this play, where this moment is going to stand for a very, very long time as the kicker missed the extra point after an incredible touchdown that would have tied the game, where this was a game in the first half where the Commanders could really do nothing, and it's shades of late season Cliff that we'll have to discuss in the coming weeks.
Okay.
And try to figure things out. I've been trying to mine resources to get theories on what's wrong with the Commanders' offense in every offense that Cliff Kingsbury calls late in seasons, but they were disjointed early. The Cowboys get Deron Bland back, and he's over there on that side of the field. Actually, Terry McLaurin scores that touchdown on the right side, something that he's done a couple times this season in very limited opportunities going from the right. But there's a Bobby Wagner strip sack. This starts with a Quan Martin block kicked as well, and we're celebrating Commanders special teams like, oh, they can do no wrong before the game absolutely falls apart, including that they score a touchdown with Zach Ertz. Then Jaden Daniels runs in the 2-point conversion, and it's 20-17, and you're thinking, oh, things great, but they have to kick to the best kick returner in the NFL, and hilarity ensues.
Yeah, so to back it up, before that Kevontae Turpin kickoff return that you're referring to, it's 10-9 in the fourth quarter, which is funny. Yeah. It's that touchdown that Schoonmaker scores to go up 20-9 is only with 5 minutes left in the game.
Blown coverage, too.
At that point, like nothing's happening. After that, you mentioned the Ertz and the 2-point conversion. That's with 3 minutes left in the game. The response there is the Turpin 99-yard kickoff return, which to me was one of the best plays of the entire season, because that spin move that he put on the Commanders after initially fumbling the ball and it got by him was just unreal athleticism, just an electric play. And I'm like, that's the highlight. That's one of the best plays of the NFL season. But we were just getting started at this point. Seibert hits a 51-yard field goal on a 1-minute drive to respond. They stop the Cowboys. And I didn't mind the Cowboys' strategy there after they didn't get the onside kick, because they were going to pin Washington deep. They got it down to about 21 seconds left, and Washington has to go the entire length of the field. I don't mind them being conservative there. That's when they hit the McLaurin. And then, yes, just for a little fun on top, we actually got a second kickoff return touchdown in the final 3 minutes by a man named Wanye Thomas.
Here we go. Onside kick. Recover it, you win. Seibert booms it to the left. It is covered, and Thomas running it back. Wanye Thomas with the Cowboys' second kickoff return for a touchdown in the game. This game is drunk.
That was our friend Brad Sham. Have not heard enough from Brad Sham this season from KRLD. And yeah, like, I know the game was probably over at that point, but Nick, when you have a play that stupid to end one of the craziest finishing sequence in NFL history, really, the last 3 minutes of this game, you just got to play it on the show.
It was just a drunk Sunday for all football teams, but especially this game. Also, kick return touchdowns are not all created equally. As you can see right there, as he returns an onside kick for a touchdown. And the whole time he's going to the end zone, I'm shouting at the screen, "Get down! Don't score! Don't score!" He scored anyway. It didn't matter.
Right. It's believed to be the first time 2 kickoff returns in the fourth quarter in NFL history. I think the first games in 30-something years to even have 2 kickoff returns in the same game. Like, it's nuts.
The camera pans over after Wanye Thomas is celebrating in the end zone to Mike McCarthy, and he's got his arms out like, why did you score that touchdown? Because Jaden Daniels comes in. He already has one Hail Mary.
That's true.
On his ledger in 2024.
That's true.
And it comes close. The ball gets picked off late, but anything you can do to win the game.
Have fun. I think it was worth it just for the Sham God's call. And Mike McCarthy, if you want to be critical, like what? You've really coached up your player to slide at the 1 in that situation? I doubt it. I mean, he's never had the ball in his life. You want to criticize McCarthy? Go for 2 there to try to finish the game. That was actually the move, and he didn't. He chickened out, but that's fine. This was the first game also in NFL history to have 2. I mean, this is a weird collection of plays, but 2 missed extra points, 2 kickoff return touchdowns, and a block punt. That is no surprise. I do have a takeaway just on the Washington side that, like, I kind of was penciling in a second wild card out of this division, and now they're 7-5. They're on a skid. The offense, as Patrick mentioned, was in Kingsbury shutdown mode in the second half of the season for most of this game. Now you start to think, like, could 2 NFC West teams get in? Could a second place team in the NFC West get in? Could the Bucs get in as a wild card if the Falcons actually win some games? I think it's going to have a lot of repercussions, Nick, because I just was penciling this one in and some of these Washington games in as a win, and they might not be mature enough right now to beat the bad teams on their schedule.
Yeah, that's what I was concerned about when they had this great start to, early in the season was, wow, they're way overachieving right now, and Cliff Kingsbury's offense is rolling, but we know what happens to a Cliff Kingsbury offense once it basically daylight savings arrives and we get to fall backward. His offense falls backward as well, and they blow a tire like the Cardinals have. I mean, granted, he put 26 points on the board, but like you said, it was 10-9 in the fourth quarter.
Any concerns about Daniels, Patrick? Sorry, Nick.
No, I don't have them based necessarily on this game. I mean, we have a whole lot of late season Cliff Kingsbury. And again, the discussion is whether or not it's in-game adjustments, whether or not it's adjustments over the course of the season, with the similarities being so particular and teams having time to figure out exactly how this set of players is operating under Cliff. But, I mean, we saw more running from Jaden Daniels in this game, including a lot of third down scrambles. But it was just there were so many opportunities where guys are running into coverage. It seems like Dallas was exceedingly prepared for the particular play structure. And Jaden's always having to throw guys into traffic. Nobody's getting wide open, where earlier in the season, that was not the case.
That is a concern. And, yeah, I know people are concerned about Daniels. Is he playing through the rib injury? I think that's hard. Let's just leave that alone, because when he's making these great plays, and he had a couple great games actually after that injury initially, maybe it is affecting him, but it's great that he ran for 74 yards. That throw to McLaurin was awesome. So he's doing a lot of good things. Let's listen quickly to Dan Quinn and Mike McCarthy before we go on to the next game.
What I told the team after the game was that this is the most challenged we've been in our time together. And I reminded them it's not enough to learn the lessons, but we have to apply them.
And it was just a game since situational extravaganza. I mean, it's just it's like Yahtzee. Everything was in there.
If you get McCarthy saying extravaganza and Yahtzee in a 10-second sound clip, I want to put it in the show. Great job there behind the scenes. So I've got a theme at the top of this show,
Okay.
and the theme is we're here in Week 12. We had some teams that we think for most of this season are pretty solid playoff teams. But as we're kind of hitting Thanksgiving, there's some real concern about how they are going to make it to the finish line. So the Commanders are number one, I'm putting in that category. The Houston Texans are number two. Let's go to Houston.
From the end zone, Stroud in trouble. He stepped out of the end zone. Sacked! Safety! Game over! Landry with his 6th sack of the year. It's 2 for Tennessee. And guess who's come to H-Town and gonna get a win?
Oh, man. Mike Keith on WGFX. Yeah, C.J. Stroud doing his Orlovsky. I feel for C.J. Stroud. I feel for Orlovsky that every time someone runs out the back of the end zone for the rest of time, his name gets mentioned. On a day where, Stroud didn't seem like he was playing in a comfortable way. He gives Titans fans something to cheer about. We haven't heard enough from Mike Keith on this season, and the Titans go into Houston and win 32-27 on a pretty wild game, Shook, where there was a lot of long touchdowns. There's actually a lot of good defense by the Titans, and they get out of there with a victory.
Yeah, a game that was filled with big chunk plays, or as Mike Keith says, big yards, and there were negative yards at the end of that game as well, with C.J. Stroud stepping out of the back of the end zone. He was pressured there, of course, but oh my God, guys, shot plays left and right. The Texans start the game with a long kick return. I think it was Daria Gumbawale, or maybe, no, it wasn't. It was
Pierce.
It was Damian Pierce. Yes, he took it almost all the way back. They get in position. Next play, touchdown pass to Cade Stover. It's 7-0 just like that. I'm chuckling at the screen because I was like, that's just too easy. This is going to be a romp for them. Nope. Will Levis and the Titans come right back. They take a 17-7 lead. He's hitting big shots to Nick Westbrook-Akine and Calvin Ridley, and they're going down the field, and it's back and forth. But it was very much an up and down game for both teams. There were rises. There were falls. There were ugly turnovers by C.J. Stroud, who threw a pick early, by Will Levis, who had a narrow lead and threw a pick six, and suddenly the Texans were back in the lead. That was one of the games where I was like, hammered this weekend. Football is just very drunk because this game couldn't decide which way they wanted to go. Neither team seemed to want to win the game. Levis ends up having a good day, save for the pick six, but he also gets sacked 8 times. 4 of them were probably his fault because he wasn't navigating the pocket well. The other 4, his offensive line wasn't protecting him well. Stroud doesn't get sacked till the end of the game and gets forced out on that safety there, yet he struggles as well, ends up with 2 picks, including a bit of a miscommunication with John Mechie, who settled down instead of continuing his route. That set up an opportunity for the Titans to kick a field goal before halftime. It was a wild game between 2 rivals that are supposed to be headed in opposite directions. And like we talked about on Monday night, Greg, a fresh batch of reasons to be concerned about the Texans' trajectory as we head toward December.
That's right. We were worried about this game on Monday night for them. I was worried about this game on Friday. If you listen to the pick show, this was my number 1 pick of the week, was Titans covering this game, not necessarily winning, just because the Texans, they just don't have it offensively right now. And I thought this matchup was tough because they wouldn't be able to run the ball against the Titans, and they didn't. 14 for 22. So if Joe Mixon isn't ripping those long plays, and he's been very good, but he's kind of a boomer bust running back this year because of his offensive line. So if you're not getting any of those booms, you're just relying on C.J. Stroud, and he's just not playing with the confidence or the good decision-making that he did earlier in his career.
Yeah, the only thing they got from Joe Mixon was 5 receptions. He had a nice reception down the sideline where he was able to make some moves, get some yards after that. There was also, there's several just key plays that didn't go the Texans' way. I think there was a 3rd and 19 in the fourth quarter where Tank Dell goes up. The Titans defender is able to just punch the ball out right before he comes down. High leverage miss there. There was a miss by Kaimi Fairbairn where they're right there, well within his extensive field goal range. He has a miss.
That was to tie the game, a 27-yarder from a guy who today set the all-time record of 50-plus field goals. Sorry to cut you off there.
No, you're not cutting me off because it's a great stat, and where just things that you expect to go right for the Houston Texans. And admittedly, we've been talking about problems on this offensive line for the entire season. That held through today, but it just takes a coalition of mistakes and errors to have 8 sacks. Danielle Hunter has 3 sacks. You score 27 points and lose.
One of the wildest stats in this game was that Will Levis became only the second quarterback in NFL history to take 7 sacks and a half twice in a season. The other one was Randall Cunningham, so he has great company. But just totally bizarre. My big takeaway, though, is okay, Nico Collins shows up, has a 56-yarder, but the touchdown that was taken away from him was endemic, I think, points out what's happening with C.J. Stroud right now, which he's in his own head. There was a 3rd down where he actually was protected pretty well and then just kind of ran forward and went down, he sacked himself. And that's a warning sign, because that was the last thing I expect out of C.J. Stroud, kind of sacking yourself like that. And then he said after the game, and I'm going to trust that he's being honest here, that touchdown that was taken back for Nico Collins, which would have really changed this game, was because of an illegal shift, because he called for 2 shifts before the play, and he had essentially a brain fart there, and he signaled to Joe Mixon and Tank Dell to shift, and they both did, but he was only supposed to call for 1. And are you concerned about Stroud, about this offense? I don't know if they can lose the division. They're 7-5, and the Colts aren't great, but they're just not a good football team.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that they're going to win this division because this division's not good. But they are also not a team that I take seriously in the playoffs because of these exact issues. That illegal shift, completely turned the momentum of this game. Then you add in the Fairbairn field goal miss. They still, at that point, they're backed up against the wall and have to figure out a way to get down the field in this crazy back and forth affair against a team that you should not be in such a game with. I don't care that it's a divisional opponent and you're familiar with each other and everything else. You're supposed to be the superior team when compared against Tennessee, and they did not play like it, and they haven't played like that in so many games this year. I was encouraged by the big plays early, hitting Nico Collins, hitting Tank Dell. It's the offense is back. Here we go. But it just didn't carry over. And that is what when I look at them and evaluate the entire AFC, and I think, all right, these are the heavy hitters. These are the teams that I expect to make deep playoff runs. The Texans just aren't there right now, and I'm really not sure they're ever going to get there.
Well, they're definitely not. I don't think I shouldn't say definitely. The NFL always makes us look stupid when we assume anything. But I also, on that note, Nick says, I wouldn't assume they're making the playoffs. I don't have much faith in the Colts, and the Texans are lucky they don't have a Colts game coming up. They got that sweep early. But if you can lose to the Titans, you can lose any game. And they do have some tough games down the stretch. So, they could be an 8 or 9 win team. They could really fall apart. I don't want to believe that, but in a game where they had 13 drives, they had 12 first downs and 11 penalties. That's bad, bro.
Yeah,
That's bad.
And some of those penalties were wiping off some of the first downs.
Right.
They had the mistakes, the drops, the missed kicks. I just think, watching Nico Collins out on the field with C.J. Stroud, seeing the plays Joe Mixon has made, Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, I think they get in the playoffs. I think they give somebody problems in the playoffs. They have their problems, yes, but they're at least experiencing them now. I'm not close.
Okay.
The door on
You
that.
got to get a win in Jacksonville next week. That's huge before their bye. Then they come back with a really tough 3-pack of games: Miami, at Kansas City, and Baltimore. Before moving on, though, I want to hear from Mike Keith again. Like I said, you just can't get enough Mike Keith.
Levis in the gun with Pollard on his right hip. Play fake. Levis firing downfield. Complete. Okonkwo 40, 50. Okonkwo 40, 30, 20.
That's a fast
10,
man.
5 end zone. Touchdown! Titans! Chig Okonkwo, his first touch, goes for 70 and a big 6. Oh my.
That's Dave McGinnis there, jumping in. You know what he did there? He was like Kurt Cobain on Smells Like Teen Spirit. He knew that was a touchdown run by what an athletic tight end, Chig Okonkwo. He knew that was going to be a touchdown, so he kept it real low and
Reeled us
quiet.
in.
So you just felt the impact of the touchdown Titans. Let's
pretty
go to
good.
Green Bay, where the Packers are not the team that could be falling apart down the stretch. The team they played, I don't know.
Under center, Packers leading by 14. Love looks it over, and here it is. Handoff, Jacobs burrowing left side, end zone, touchdown, and there is your dagger. (30-10).
That is right. Wayne Larrivee, WR&W. The dagger might have been even earlier, but Wayne has respect for the 49ers. He doesn't expect a beatdown like this. The game finishes 38-10. It's the biggest loss in the history of this rivalry, which is crazy. It's also the biggest loss in terms of the deficit that Kyle Shanahan has had since 2018. Different times now for the 49ers, who did not have Brock Purdy in this game. They did not have Nick Bosa in this game. And so on one hand, you give him a pass, Nick. On the other hand, I do think the way they lost, that it's not competitive, also speaks to kind of where this team is at 5-6.
Yeah, Green Bay dominated this game basically from the first quarter onward. Yeah, it got down to a 10-point game and then a 14-point game, but it was never really all that close because the Niners only mounted one drive of significance all day, and it was the one that ended in the 3-yard touchdown pass to George Kittle, which was a great catch. Brandon Allen threw some nice passes. He had some excellent completions. He also had some misses, and it just felt like the punch out of this Niners had been taken from them. They didn't struggle in pressuring Jordan Love that much. Love was getting out of the pocket a lot, though, to extend plays as a result of that pressure, even without Nick Bosa. They didn't stack up against the Packers on both sides of the ball. They also committed a ton of penalties in every phase of the game. Deebo Samuel had an 87-yard kick return to open up the second half. You're like, oh, there's the spark they need. Called back by a penalty. Like, they were constantly behind the sticks. They asked Allen way too much, to do way too much with his arm. He finishes 17-29 for 199, a touchdown and a pick by who? Xavier McKinney. Of course, who else would it be intercepting opposing quarterbacks than Xavier McKinney? The Packers just dominated. They were better in every phase of the game. And it's one of those games where you look at the Niners and you think, oh, I don't know, because Christian McCaffrey, not effective, still doesn't look all that explosive. He only had 11 carries, but he finished with 31 yards. This offense was very lopsided, and they just never stood much of a chance. They gave away the ball 3 times. The Packers defense had a banner day. They were playing with their hair on fire, flying around the field. It just looked like a team that was contending for a Super Bowl versus a team that's like, yeah, we're middling, at 500 or worse.
Yeah, the Packers kind of, I wouldn't say they needed a game like this, but I think it's going to feel good for them to get to 8-3 and have a game where they did everything they needed to do. You can't even put it on the 49ers offense. Brandon Allen and the 49ers had run 6 plays at that point, the 49ers defense had already given up 17 points. So Brandon Allen apparently had a broken finger, according to the sideline on Fox, and had never been on the injury report. He's the starter of this game. Kyle Shanahan, as Cynthia Freeland likes to call him, the lying liar who lies. I mean, they got to find him for that. He's a starting quarterback, and they never mention a broken finger. Brock Purdy, meanwhile, not just missed this game. I'm concerned about where this is going because they said they reported he had a second MRI on his shoulder before missing this game, and a starting quarterback doesn't miss a game with a right shoulder injury unless it's serious and you get 2 MRIs, hoping to maybe see something different. Before we just kind of wrap up the 49ers portion of this conversation, they just feel like a team that had didn't have it all already, and now maybe it's just like one injury too many. Obviously, if Purdy misses another game or two, like it's done.
Yeah, just 3 wins without Trent Williams in the Trent Williams era.
Trent Williams didn't play in this game. Thank you.
No, it's been a rough injury season in Santa Clara, and now, like when I initially saw the reports, because we talked to Tom Pelissero on Tuesday about Brock Purdy leaving practice with shoulder soreness. The 49ers, the statements again coming out of, Cynthia tells us about Kyle Shanahan. Nothing to be concerned about. Then he goes in the MRI machine, and nobody's getting in there for fun.
Right.
Much less do it twice. So they're looking for something that is really, really a problem.
Plus, it's expensive. Like, I don't know if they have the same healthcare as us, but an MRI, forget about it.
Well, yeah, it better be better than ours. Because otherwise, Brock Purdy's going to be getting a call from a collector here in 3 years. But aside from that, just an ineffective game, trouble protecting. Allen, he had a fumble forced by Lucas Van Ness's helmet. Again, if he only has 9 fingers to hold onto the ball, that's right. A real issue. You start to wonder, with Dimes sitting at home and looking for a team, perhaps this is the spot.
That's a good call. I thought Minnesota, when Darnold looked like he sprained his ankle, but he came right back into the game. And you're absolutely right. It could be a spot for Danny Dimes. Let's talk about the Packers. They're going to be playing on Thanksgiving. Definitely the best game on Thanksgiving is Packers-Dolphins. Although Caleb Williams playing so well, we'll get to him, spices up that Bears-Lions game. Tell me about your takeaways, Shook, on the Packers, especially on offense in this game where it took them, at least the passing game, a little while to get going.
Yeah, the passing game was there, but it was a lot of missed shots, actually. There was a ball that Jordan Love put on Christian Watson that was perfect. I'm watching it travel through the air, and I'm like, do I have enough juice to get there? And as it's descending, I'm like, oh, it's right on him. Right there, and he drops it. There was like a few of those in this game where Love's total would have been 50, 75, 100 yards more and maybe another touchdown. It didn't look as bad as the numbers looked, when you're comparing the two. But really, this is all about Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs paces this offense in this game. 26 carries, 106 yards, 3 rushing touchdowns, and a career-high 15 forced missed tackles. Okay?
Wow.
That's the most by any ball carrier in a single game this season, according to Next Gen Stats. That was a rate of 57.7%, his highest of the season. Okay, he's having a great year, as we know, with the Packers. That fit's been tremendous, and this was the peak for him so far. And they kind of needed it because Love wasn't piling up those numbers. But the crazy thing is when you look at the stats after the game, I'm surprised that they didn't break 400 yards of offense just because it was that one-sided. And it was because they got short fields from their defense. They capitalized over and over and over again. They were a pretty efficient offense. They averaged a little bit under 5 yards per play, but they were just, it looked very good. Tucker Kraft got involved. He had a touchdown catch. He had another catch to set up another touchdown. It was just an offense that could attack you from a number of different ways and a strong performance for the whole unit.
Yeah, the run game is going to be so important for them. It's what's made them special this year. I know the Malik Willis games juice it up a little bit, but they truly are one of the best running teams in the league. Jacobs is having one of those seasons. It's every other year for Jacobs. And Emmanuel Wilson is the one actually that shows me, man, this team and the play calling, they're all really in sync. Because when Emmanuel Wilson comes in for those 7-8 carries a game, he's getting it done as well. So really looking forward to seeing them on Thanksgiving night. And yeah, it is getting late early for the 49ers, who play Eric's Bills next week. And they're going to need a healthy quarterback, or they could be at 5-7 and in big, big trouble, because there are good teams in the NFC West. Let's go to Seattle.
Scrimmage on 4th and 1 at the 40. Murray under center this time. Play fake. Murray's going to try to get it. He's going to run far side. He's going to dump it over the top. Intercepted. Kobe Bryant. Far sideline. He's got the blockers. 30, 25, 20, 10, 5. Touchdown. Seahawks. No flags. Kobe Bryant.
Oh, Kobe Bryant. He hit him with the Marshawn Lynch.
HMD.
Yeah, celebration. Good job by Patrick Claybon, giving me the assist. Didn't know how to handle that moment, but it wasn't too big for Patrick. Steve Rabel of KIRO. Man, that play really changed the entire game. I thought Kyler Murray had a chance to get to the edge, but Devin Witherspoon did a fantastic job after diving on the inside, made Kyler Murray hesitate for just a second, and by then it was too late. He didn't have the angle on the run. He forces a pass that just sails Kobe Bryant, takes it to the house. 16-6. The Seahawks get it done, and I wanted to start with that play because it really was all about this defense, and it's now a thing. We talked about it coming into this game. The Seahawks defense in the last 3 games against the Rams, the 49ers, and now the Cardinals have given up a total of 36 points in regulation. Rams hit him for that overtime touchdown too, but I'm talking regulation. 36 total points. That's 12 points a game. And they came out today with one thing just stressed above all, and that was to stop this Cardinals rushing attack. You've been talking about it, Nick, all year, that they kind of go as James Conner goes. Well, he had 12 carries today. He had a 0% success rate on those 12 carries and only 14 runs as a whole because they were so unsuccessful running the ball. It made the Cardinals one-dimensional. Kyler could have made a couple plays. Like they had some penalties go against them. There is a different world where they are closer at the end of this game, but ultimately Seattle's defense dictated. And I would say that's been true 3 straight division games. Mike McDonald, a little bit like Baltimore a year ago, has figured things out in the middle of the season, and they're really streaking. Leonard Williams especially was outrageous today.
Yeah, I think we know that when you stop this rushing attack, that it makes the entire Cardinals offense run into a rut, right? So that should be approach number 1. But you're right. It absolutely speaks to Seattle coming on as of late. I mean, the funny thing is that Mike McDonald and John Schneider are not afraid to just jettison guys that suddenly don't work for them anymore
Right.
in an effort to get better. Like Tyrell Dodson, gone, get out of here. Oh, by the way, we've allowed 10 points or 12 points per game over the last 3 games. Like that's super impressive, especially for a regime with Mike McDonald as the head coach, of course. That was a little bit questionable because his reputation coming in was, I'm going to fix this defense. This defense was our weakness last year. And for a lot of the early games this season, and even up until, I don't know, the start of this past month or so, they weren't delivering. And too much was on Geno Smith, and you saw the risks that are associated with that. Yes, you get the thrills, but you also get the risks. Then they come in and they hold an offense that's quarterbacked by Kyler Murray to just 6 points, and you're able to win with just 16 points offensively. That is a team coming together at the right time in a very winnable division, and you don't need Geno to throw for 350 and maybe risk 3 interceptions or something to get there. It's a beautiful thing when a team starts to come together like that.
Well, hell, they only scored 9 points offensively, right? Because they got the pick 6, and I think the Seahawks offense was better than that number would show, but Geno had a very similar interception to what happened on the Kyler Murray play, where after what I thought was the Seahawks maybe best drive of the whole season, like if they had finished it off, Geno has a rushing lane to get a first down, and he throws an interception that was not necessary and keeps the Cardinals in it for a little while longer. But they did get the ball back in a situation close to their own goal line, and he hit 2 of the toughest third down conversions that you'll ever see, end up having their longest drive of the season. It's a field goal drive, but it was good situational football and felt to me like a game-winning drive. I mean, it's not the same as you're trailing and you need a touchdown, but it essentially was a fourth-quarter game-winning drive.
Yeah, wiped most of the fourth quarter off the clock, and Geno ultimately on that interception in the red zone, ball caught in the end zone, didn't see the defender until he's looking up at the replay after the play, and then he was dejected for the entire. There was a sideline shot of Geno Smith not looking at anybody, just staring off in the distance, really frustrated with himself. Comes back. There's a third and I believe 14 where Geno just had a turnover in the red zone.
Yep.
Fires a dangerous ball to DK that he fits in there, like not affected by the mistake at all. Geno comes right back. They go down the field, burning clock while throwing the ball. Kenny Walker has a couple plays on that drive as well. Jackson Smith and Jigba has a catch where the game this drive starts way before 5 minutes to go, and you know the clock's not stopping on incomplete passes, and it gets into that time frame where the Cardinals are thinking about taking timeouts
right
towards the end of it.
I'm glad you mentioned that. That play to DK was one of the plays of the game by Geno, but there was also a 3rd and 8 to start out that drive where the pressure got there right away. And for Geno fans, today was weird because he really wasn't under that much pressure. He actually had a lot of time to throw, and early in the game, I almost felt like it was freaking them out. Like, we don't know what to do. Like, he just started spinning around a little bit, and they did not move the ball. They punted it the first 4 times, and Arizona really wasn't getting that much pressure. They were doing a really good job in coverage, and it was a game in the second half of very few possessions. They had an 11-play drive, which ended with his interception, and then that 8-minute drive that Patrick just referred to. But, yes, on the first third down where he is essentially backing up to his own goal line just about, pressure gets there immediately, and he throws a ball that has to have perfect anticipation that he throws before the receiver comes out of his break. And that's what you love about Geno, is that he will give you one. At this point, we got to accept it. Like, he'll give you a chance at one, and some great quarterbacks do, but he will always keep firing. And I actually thought if you took that one play away, and that's a big if, this would have been like either his best game of the year or one of them, because other than that one play, he was outstanding, Nick.
Yeah, you take the good with the bad with him, right? Like, you get the electric moments, and you also get the moments where you're like, oh, no, why'd you throw that? Oh, DK caught it. All right, cool, first down. Speaking of which, 7 of 14 on third down. Mm-hmm. I want to know how many of those were on that one specific drive that Patrick mentioned, because, like, for the rest of the offensive output, it doesn't seem to quite line up. But it's, I mean, a march like that, you got to convert a number of third downs to keep the drive going. Kind of a strange day for them, considering like their identity offensively, and especially in previous games. But you'll take them. You know, a win's a win.
Yeah, I will answer your question. 3 first downs on that drive.
There you go.
So 3 of
almost
7.
half.
Yeah, and that first one was to Smith and Jigba, who I really think has improved and is a big part of their story. But the other third down was on a 3rd and 4 draw, and I almost screamed. I can't remember the last time the Seahawks have had a successful run on a 3rd down in like 4. I mean, it's outrageous. Their running game was pretty poor throughout this game. If they can get their regular running game going occasionally, like other than plays where Ken Walker runs into a wall and then spins around and gets 17 yards, they could be really good.
And maybe work the play action passing game a little bit more. Is Geno throwing play action on 15%? I think of pass attempts, one of the lowest rates in the league. And another tendency breaker today where we think of Geno taking shots downfield all the time, like that ball to DK Metcalf. 20 of 24 of passes under 10 air yards today for 207 yards, and that one touchdown where there's something about the search bar over there where this Cardinals defense is bugging everybody. Can't figure out why, but they're able to consistently do it.
They got it done again, ultimately. I mean, they held the Seahawks under 5 yards per play. They held them to 9 points on offense. Both teams were under 300 yards. So, yes, there are good defenses here in the NFC West. This division race is just getting started. Seahawks needed this win. They already had 2 division losses. The Cardinals didn't have any. They would have gone to 3-0. These two teams play each other in 2 weeks. And ultimately, that game is going to be even bigger. But the Seahawks set up themselves tied atop the NFC West after 11 weeks at 6-5. Good stuff by the Seahawks in this entire division. Let's take a break and get to some other craziness in the NFC North.
The long snapper, Ryan Wright holds. This is a 29-yard field goal between the hash marks to win it. Snap spot. Romo! Yes! And the Minnesota Vikings have won 5 consecutive games at Soldier Field. The final score, 30-27.
That was our friend Paul Allen on KFAN. They had to work for it. The Minnesota Vikings win in overtime after giving up an 11-point lead in the final 2 minutes of this game. Great game in the NFC North. Caleb Williams played outstanding, throws for 340 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like I said, led the Bears to a last-second drive and then a last-second field goal after they recover an onside kick with under 20 seconds to go. A fantastic game. Jordan Addison goes for 8 for 162. I think this is the perfect situation, Patrick, for Bears fans.
Why is that?
I mean, I know you'd like to win, and this hurts, but Caleb Williams has played his 2 best games as a pro, I believe, in a row.
Okay.
You're seeing everything you want out of your number 1 overall draft pick. But ownership is also seeing everything they want to fire Matt Eberflus at the end of this year. This team's not going to the playoffs anyway, so what you want is Caleb development, but maybe some losses, a good draft pick, and a new head coach next year.
I can see the case for that.
Okay.
You get everything that you want. You find your quarterback finally. 340, 2 touchdowns, where he also led the game in rushing for the Chicago Bears as well, beating out. And it's going to be tough to run against this Flores defense, but it's going to be tough to throw for 340 yards, and he's able to do that. And yes, the most of the Bears people that I talk to, the fans, the people who want the best for the team, probably would, and shout out to Matt Eberflus and all the success he's had, would prefer a different head coach. So I agree that maybe this is the best case scenario.
Although, now I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. If you had just won this game, first of all, it would have felt good to end that losing streak. You'd only be at 6 losses, which now in the NFC would only be 1 loss back. So you could have some copium convincing of yourself. But part of the reason why I don't think the Bears are going to win a ton of games down the stretch is, Caleb is suddenly playing well now, but the defense isn't getting enough stops shook when it really matters. The Vikings go for 452 yards. I was really impressed, actually, with the drive that they had to set up a Romo field goal with 1:56 left. Felt like that ended the game at 27-16, where Nick Mullins had a 3rd and long because he came in for a play, and Aaron Jones gets a big conversion, and then Sam Darnold, who has really played well the last couple of weeks especially, has a big 3rd down conversion, and they're bleeding the clock. So the Bears not getting enough stops really to be the type of team that Eberflus wants them to be. And I think for the Vikings, getting to 9-2 with a win like this, I don't care about the style points. I think that's impressive that they stuck with it and you ultimately get it done in the end.
Yeah, I mean, style points can be overrated from time to time, especially in a divisional game. I mean, on that Bears defensive note, though, there were like multiple 3rd downs in the overtime period where I was like, oh, this defense is crumbling. Like, this is not the defense that it was even 6 weeks ago. There were multiple 3rd downs where Darnold drops back. He's been sacked. They're behind schedule, and he finds T.J. Hawkinson open. He finds Jordan Addison open down the sideline beyond the sticks where it's soft coverage. Why are you allowing that to happen? Because your defense is not as good as it used to be. On a day in which you allow 3 different guys to break 100 yards. Aaron Jones, 22 for 106. Jordan Addison, 8 for 162. Hawkinson, 7 for 114. Like you said, 452 yards of offense for the Vikings. That is not the Bears defense that we thought it was. Not to quote the late, great Denny Green, but yeah. I agree. And the Vikings get the job done. Like, that's what's most important here is that they got the job done. Sam played a clean game. He threw for 330. Everything's fine. It was a little weird at the end. You screwed up on some details, but you came away with the win. You were able to overcome that adversity when you were basically collapsing on the road in the Windy City. But I do want to pivot back to Caleb because there was one throw he made early in the game where he ran down the sideline. He escaped pressure. He's looking downfield, and I'm like, oh, this is a video game throw. Because as he's doing the Josh Allen. He's approaching the sideline, and DeAndre Swift wisely turns upfield, and he just lofts it over the defender to Swift for a gain of 30. And at that moment, I wrote down the note where I was just like, that's the play extension that we've seen from him for weeks. That usually results in incompletions, or he has to throw it away, or maybe he gets sacked late, which did happen to him later, but he was able to make it work. And that was kind of a point about this whole Bears offense since they replaced Shane Waldron with Thomas Brown, where I'm like, hey, you know what? Yeah, they lost the game, but they still put up 398 yards of offense. They still had a fighting chance. They still competed, and Caleb is able to make things like that happen. He's way better than I thought he would be coming out of USC. I avoid the generational tag on him, but after watching everything that he's dealt with, because like we've spent so many weeks, the talking heads have spent so many weeks, not us specifically, because I think we know better, where it's like, is Caleb the problem? Do they need a quarterback again? They don't need a quarterback again. They need to be better around him, and that starts with the coaching staff. This is the guy. He is a special quarterback. Bears fans, enjoy it. Hope that everything around him gets a little bit better because he's going to be your guy for a long time.
It's a really fascinating comment, but it makes sense if you weren't as big as him coming out of college. I was never worried long-term about him. He had shown more than enough throughout the season, and it was so early. But the way this season was going, how can you not be a little surprised how quickly the change to Thomas Brown has turned things around? I really think his game last week was underrated, and he played outstanding. And he had that throw to Swift, but earlier on that drive, he also ripped one into Keenan Allen. They were down 11 points, like I said, and it felt like it was maybe garbage time. And I'm tracking this game because one of my picks with Cynthia was Vikings, minus 3.5. I'm like, oh, they're going to get the cover. And they actually have a 4th down play where Rome Odunze catches it, like a great individual play by Odunze, but a great throw also by Caleb to trust him on a 4th down. Like, they would have lost by 11 if they don't make that play, but they get the touchdown. They get the 2-point conversion, and then they get the onside kick after it bounces off a Viking. And I think one of the best throws he made all game was 21 seconds left. He has to thread it over the top of the linebacker, but with velocity to DJ Moore. That was a sick throw. You run up and you spike it. That's legendary stuff. And I know the overtime went sour. He took a bad sack. He's a rookie, and it wasn't all going to be perfect. But my God, he was like one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL today.
Yeah, and even when things don't go right? Because that completion to Rome Odunze on 4th down, it came after a 3rd down attempt where Caleb sails one over Rome's head.
Right.
He's throwing his hands on his helmet because he can't believe he made a miss like that, but then he comes right back. And so even the decisions, and that's the one thing that I always want to, with a rookie quarterback, whether or not the ball is complete, the throw is catchable, how was the decision? Mm-hmm. How was the process? And the process has been very good for Caleb. Again, other than when he holds on the ball for entirely too long, like he did in overtime. But the question is, as Shook points out, is the team around him, right? And you mentioned that Nick Mullins completion. That was actually a very high leverage play. Like
huge.
It's 21-16 at that point. Sam Darnold is out. Nick Mullins comes in for one play. That one play is 3rd and 12.
Right.
It's 3rd and 12, and he throws an easy pass to Aaron Jones where there's
no one there.
There's no Bears defenders there in the middle of the field. He runs for a 1st down. Nick Mullins could take his helmet off and go chill for the rest of the game because Sam Darnold comes back in. They go down the field and hit a field goal, which winds up being ultimately the difference in the game.
Right. Aaron Jones fumbled on the goal line early in the game. He ends up with 100 yards on the ground, also had that huge reception. When Aaron Jones is playing well, they're playing well. He talked to our friend Stacey Dales after the game.
So good to see you get in the end zone. After that fumble in the first drive, we saw the emotions on the sideline.
I tried to keep it together on the sideline, but it's hard, because I want to get in the end zone so bad, and you lose the ball. Those are things that get you fired, and I can't do that. I got to be better than that, but I'm glad I got a chance to make up for it, and I told Coach thank you for sticking with me, and it means the world to me.
Ain't nobody firing you, my friend.
That is absolutely true. Although Jones has had that's a couple big-time fumbles now in big situations near the goal line, but he ends up helping them get to a win with some big plays late. And, yeah, when Addison's one of the best second receivers in the league, it was nice to see him go off for 8 for 162. Justin Jefferson had a long touchdown called back by an offensive pass interference, but if you can win and be dominant offensively on a day where he only had 27 yards and Hawkinson is going crazy, shows you're doing something right. They have the right coach. Kevin O'Connell has the most one-score wins in the entire NFL since he was hired in 2022. You know who has the worst record in one-score games since 2022? It's right there for you guys.
Kyle Shanahan.
It's right there for you guys. It's part of this game. It all connects.
Matt Eberflus.
That's why you got to get a new coach. Let's go. It's time for the Sunday Drive presented by the all-new hybrid Toyota Camry. Yeah, let's go to Indianapolis, where one of the best coaches in the league was visiting.
Jared leans in. There's the snap. Jared hands it to Gibbs over the right side, trying to get to the edge. He will. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. Felt the contact, just kept going outside until he found an opening, and he did. Second touchdown of the day for Jahmyr Gibbs.
Some days it's a David Montgomery day. Some days it's a Jahmyr Gibbs day. Usually it's both. This was the 9th game where they both scored a touchdown, which is absolutely outrageous. But the fact that Jahmyr Gibbs is one of the best players on the field at any time that he is on the field made a huge difference in a 24-6 Lions victory over the Colts. That was Dan Miller from WXYT, Lomas Brown in the booth as well. And this was a game, guys, that didn't have to be as one-sided as it was. When you watched it, it didn't seem like they were that uneven. But the crazy difference, I think, if you just wanted to pick one, was how the Lions are so good at running the ball that they can run the ball on 3rd and long. 3 different times in this game they did so. The first time, it was part of a drive with Jahmyr Gibbs where he hits a 3rd and long. I think it was 3rd and 8 on that one, and he gets the first down, and they just ride him all the way to the end zone. 5 straight Jahmyr Gibbs plays, he scores a touchdown. Second quarter, this is a Montgomery play, 3rd and 6. You give it to Montgomery, he just knocks people off him. And yeah, maybe they're running to set up the 4th down, but they didn't even need it. He converts. They give him the ball 2 plays later for the touchdown, reward him. And then late in the game, that touchdown call we heard was actually a 3rd and 5 from the 14, and the game, or from the 6 rather, and the game was still up in the air. It was 14-6. It was a 1-score game, and they're scoring touchdowns, and they're converting 3rd and long shook by handing the ball off. They have so many different ways to win, but literally no other team in the NFL is winning like that.
Well, it starts with their offensive line, which we have known is one of the best units in the NFL. We've known that since last year. They protect Jared Goff well. They open rushing lanes, and they have 2 phenomenal backs to take advantage of that. And like you said, sometimes this is Jahmyr Gibbs' day, and sometimes it's David Montgomery day. Today was Jahmyr Gibbs' day. But the fact that you have that at your disposal frees you up to be unpredictable. On a passing down for most teams, it could be a running down for you. This is also very much just a classic Lions win. The score might not indicate it because they only won by 18, air quotes. But at the same time, they go for almost 400 yards of offense. They convert 9 of 15 third downs, and they dominate time of possession by 14 minutes. Like, that's what you can do when you run the ball well. Oh, and by the way, Jared Goff, master of finding guys open over the middle of the field. He goes 15 of 16 for 185 when targeting the middle third of the field with a completion percentage over expected of plus 16. Like, if there's one thing you take away from the Lions, it's the middle third of the field. They didn't do it. They didn't stop the run. Of course, the Lions are going to win this way. It's just that they had a possession end on downs on the Indianapolis 14 that could have produced a touchdown or at least a field goal. That's why the score comes so close. Even an 18-point difference still feels kind of close for this Lions team because of how badly they've blown teams out. This is who they are. They're 10-1. They're a great football team, and they're a buzzsaw. Like, in other terms, they're a wagon, right? This is a team that is going to give everybody problems, including the Indianapolis Colts.
I think the Colts defense played well. I think they even played well enough to win a different sort of game if the offense had gone on some longer drives. You mentioned how they stopped the Lions on a 4th down in the red zone, which you just don't see too much. But yeah, it was kind of like they were so worried about the middle of the field. You have the linebackers playing back on 3rd down, and it still didn't help. And the Lions kept looking at that, and they're like, if you're not going to play big up front against us defensively, we're going to run in these situations all the time, and we're good enough, we're going to hit it.
It works out for them. The Colts, by the way, have 3 players on their team with over 100 tackles now in this game, which is
that's crazy.
At week 12, where they got a great play from Laiatu Latu. It was a scary play for the Lions because not only did Jared Goff fumble, but Taylor Decker gets rolled up. I think within 10 plays, also the cornerback, Carlton Davis, leaves the game with a knee injury. He was on the bike. He said afterwards he's able to stand and walk on it. But you have to watch out for those guys for the game coming up on Thanksgiving with a quick turnaround, dealing with injuries in this one. But a solid game by a Colts defense, and the offense has been what it's been kind of all year, whether it's Anthony Richardson or Joe Flacco. Boomer bust, a lot of shots downfield, a lot of plays called back due to penalty.
Oh, yeah.
As well. Josh Downs had a huge completion. They got wiped away. Richardson just missed Pierce for what could have been a touchdown earlier in the game. It's just a high variance situation with Indy at all times on offense, where they're limited possession-wise here, and the possessions they do have, they make mistakes in them.
It's so funny. Like, each week, looking at Anthony Richardson's average up the target, it was over 13 in this game, and he only completed 11 passes out of 28, but he did it for 172 yards. This was a better version of the game that got him benched, where I said, if you watch the tape, he looked much better than that, because I actually thought Richardson played well enough today as well. Here's what happened to them. 3 plays called back from penalty. Ogletree dropped a sure touchdown, which really changed the game, and they had another drop in a big spot, and then there was another Ashton Doolin catch where it was a nice throw to the sideline, and he does the Xavier Worthy thing where he doesn't get his feet coordinated. And so the passing game, I think, could have been a lot better. Josh Downs left with an injury at one point, but was able to come back. Same thing with Michael Pittman, who finishes 6 for 96. That guy is just so tough. But they're just not going to go anywhere if they can't get Jonathan Taylor going. and Taylor was 11 for 35 today. They used Richardson in the running game pretty effectively when they needed to early, but if Jonathan Taylor in that part of the running game isn't working and it's hard against the Lions, then they're just not going to be good enough. One of the reasons it's not working, the Lions are starting 3 rookie offensive linemen now, partly because of injuries. It was a 3rd rounder, a 4th rounder, and I believe an undrafted free agent. That's tough. Richardson was under a lot of pressure today. Aleem McNeil absolutely dominated his matchup against, oh man, I wrote it down. I felt bad for this young man. Maybe I won't even say his name because it was just sad how bad he was. It was Dalton Tucker, who is a real person for the Colts. I just threw it out there. Sorry, Dalton, wherever you are. And you mentioned the injuries. David Montgomery left with a shoulder injury, but said he'll be fine for next week. You mentioned Carlton Davis. Taylor Decker returns to the game. Khalif Raymond, who's an important player for them, had a foot injury, and I think it might be something that keeps him out a little while. Certainly out for Thanksgiving. But an outstanding performance there by the Lions. They're at 10-1, the best Lions team in history through 11 games, and the Colts are at 5-7, not out of it in the AFC South if the Texans keep blowing it. That was the Sunday Drive presented by the all-new hybrid Toyota Camry. Whatever your vibe, it's a Camry vibe. Learn more at toyotacamry.com. Let's go to MetLife Stadium. Certainly Tommy DeVito would help the vibes, wouldn't he?
Here's the snap, 2nd down and goal. Bucks have 2 timeouts. Running the ball is Baker Mayfield. He fakes the pass. Crowds to his left. To the 1, touchdown. Baker Mayfield put on a cape and flew into the end zone. How about that touchdown number 3 rushing for Baker Mayfield this season? Look at him cheering on the Bucks fans.
That was Gene Deckerhoff on WFUS.
That's what he was doing, Gene.
Gene couldn't have known that Baker was doing the Tommy Cutlets celebration. But that is what he was doing. After a very Tommy DeVito run there, Baker Mayfield doing it all. 30-7. Bucks come off their bye week and do exactly what they would want. Total domination, about as one-sided a first half as they could have possibly had, and then they just cruise to a victory where Tommy DeVito ends up with 189 yards, almost all in deep garbage time. The first half of this game shook 290 yards to 64. Baker completions, 19. Giants plays, 17. Bucky Irving had more receiving yards, I believe, at the time than the Giants had total yards at halftime. So it looked like a non-conference game. It was a bigger, I watched a little Georgia UMass just because I'm a sicko, and this was way more one-sided than Georgia UMass.
Yeah, that wasn't a surprisingly competitive game between Georgia and UMass, by the way. Yeah, Baker, 8 for 10 on passes of 10-plus air yards for 172, okay? Very lopsided. If people think that the Buccaneers are what their record says they are, they're wrong. This is a much better team than 4-6 or now 5-6. They've just been banged up like crazy, and they're starting to get healthy at the right time. And they played a team that basically they kicked while they were down. Tommy DeVito comes in, and it's been a weird week for the Giants with the whole Daniel Jones playing safety on scout team, then reading the statement, then being gone the next day. Tommy DeVito is the next best option in the mind of Brian Dable, and this is what you get. An unproductive offense, a lopsided loss with a Buccaneers team that needs a launch pad. They need a little bit of good feeling going as they get into the stretch run late in the season as they try to reach the playoffs. This is the team to play to get back on track and get the momentum going in your right direction. And of course, it starts with Baker Mayfield, who, as much as people like to hate on him, he's still having a phenomenal year. In fact, I believe he's on pace to best his career numbers.
What is this straw man? Who are the people hating on him? Is it me?
The hater in chief.
Is it me?
Next to me.
Is it me? Because if it is me, I don't need you to be saying people doing it. I'm sitting right here, bro.
I will jump through this screen right now.
No, I got to give him credit. He's playing.
There
awesome.
It is.
I actually think he's been playing better, Patrick, since Mike Evans and Chris Godwin got hurt, and now you get Mike Evans back, and he made a difference in this game. 5 for 68, a couple of nice chunk plays, and they're humming.
No, definitely. And this Giants team, as you mentioned, is completely dead in the water. We'll we'll get to that discussion because I know we have Malik Neighbors sound very frustrated. Malik Neighbors, who wound up eventually getting 9 targets. But we'll hear from Malik on when those targets came.
I mean, you're a host. You can just throw to it, baby.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's hear Malik Neighbors after the game answering questions about his participation as well as his frustration.
I'm tired of going out there and losing. Like, it's just that. I mean, I don't know, bro. Go out there first, second quarter, don't get the ball, start getting targets at the end. I mean, can't do nothing. Start getting the ball when it's 30-0. What you want me to do?
Why in the first half are they not looking at you?
I don't know. Talk to Daves about that.
It's the gum smacking that really does it.
Yeah, that gum is getting chewed hard.
8 pieces of double bubble in his mouth.
But, and again, we got the full context there because I think the overall reaction is going to be Malik Neighbors firing shots at Brian Daboll. It's a legitimate response. Like, you're going to ask me?
Right.
Why the ball's coming to me when the quarterback is getting released. Now we've got a second-year guy and Tommy DeVito coming in, throwing me the ball. Why are you asking me this question? There's other people you should be directing these questions towards.
Yeah, and he made it fairly clear because he said, well, you can see the quarterback isn't the issue here because we look the same today as we did with Daniel Jones, to which I would say,
not that bad.
Yes, but the position is the issue, Malik. Like, both quarterbacks are the issue. You're right. It didn't get better with Tommy DeVito. I would argue it got a little worse. But
Malik's biased, though. He's biased because they just got rid of the quarterback who leaned disproportionately on him for the first half of the season. Of course he's mad he's not getting targets. He got a ton with Daniel Jones.
That's true. But in the first half of these games, he wasn't as much, and it didn't matter. The Giants' defense was just getting dog-walked down the field. I love Bucky Irving. He ends up with 156 yards from scrimmage. He's doing some great blocking on certain pass plays, which is supposed to be the thing that he couldn't do at all, but I at least saw one great rep today. Rashad White is one of the best pass blockers in the league, and he ends up with a touchdown today and active. But, man, Irving just makes guys miss. I got to go check out the PFF's elusive rate after this because I just have to imagine he is up there near the top with Josh Jacobs in terms of forcing missed tackles. He's electric. And to give you guys your Baker Mayfield flowers.
Okay.
He was so good in this game. I don't even want to point out any of the plays in the first half where they were as dominant a team as I've seen all season on both sides of the ball. I'm actually going to point out a couple plays in the second half. There was a 3rd and 8 early where he's dropping back into the end zone, and his pass protection is holding up great, and that's part of the reason why he's having such a good season. But he is just so calm back there, looking through his reads. They're not there, and then he scrambles, and that's where he gets that nice block, just like a great run. Then 3rd and 11 later on that drive, just a few plays later, the type of situation we're saying that maybe Baker's not built for that. That I'm saying that sometimes he's not built for that. 3rd and 11, straight drop back. They actually don't protect him well. He hits a dart right over the middle to a man named Ryan Miller while he's getting absolutely clobbered by Dexter Lawrence. That's play number 2. And then play number 3 is the 56-yard run by Bucky Irving where Baker Mayfield is out as his lead blocker, outrunning Bucky Irving and making a pretty nice block where he peels back on the play. I mean, this dude, he's getting it done. He's not an MVP candidate, but he's pretty awesome. I got
that last play was so good, and that's what Baker does. He's been doing that for years. He'll run with the play and sometimes get involved in the blocking, but he's so far ahead of Bucky that he's going, come on, right. Let's go.
it was really good, and been saying it for a while here. The Bucs really have an opportunity to go win the NFC South. And now with that Washington loss, it just puts it in my mind more. That second wild card might be up for grabs too. So even if Atlanta is winning games, the Bucs, they are in this mix. They have a good schedule coming up. They stay in the division next week in Carolina. But wait, maybe going to Carolina isn't so easy anymore.
Will Carolina call timeout? Placement is down. Schrader's kick is up. Schrader's kick is good! 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 Spencer Schrader on a 31-yard field goal, and the Chiefs walk it off with the field goal, winning 30-27 to get their 10th victory of the 2024 campaign.
Mitch Holthus WDAF. If it's Sunday, it's a Mitch Holthus call on the last play of the game, and the Chiefs are winning. At this point, they're so bored that they're just coming up with new players that can come up with game-winning plays. Spencer Strader. Like, that's a guy we definitely had heard of 3 weeks ago. Sure. 30-27. Chiefs get it done. Bryce Young plays well. All those TikToks you were telling me, I'm an old man, Patrick, about, that we're saying Bryce Young and the Panthers, they were going to be the team that ends the Chiefs, winning streak. Of course, the streak ends last week, but they almost got this W.
They almost did, and the Chiefs give up 27 points to the Panthers after giving up their first 30-point regular season game to the Buffalo Bills, where there's some concerns there. But things started off because you said, Greg, coming into this game, you wanted the Chiefs to go up there, go down the field and score, and that's how they started. There's a Samaje Perine kickoff return, 56 yards, and then the Panthers blow a coverage 3 plays later on a Noah Gray touchdown. Noah Gray has another touchdown later in this game. He's got 4 scores in the last 2 games. And then the Panthers have drives that both kind of fizzle out. They end with field goals. But then, finally, the Panthers defense, after really not making plays in the game, 7:56 to go in the first half, Jadeveon Clowney wins off the line of scrimmage, retraces to get Mahomes on a sack. They're forced to take a Schrader field goal there. The Panthers defense got some key stops as the game goes on, and Bryce heats up. He hits David Moore on a long play, then converts to David Moore on the touchdown. They're down 8 late, get the touchdown and a 2-point conversion after Mahomes, who thankfully they lose Jatavian Sanders in this game, was a tough one. He lands on his head. They get charged a timeout there. He was going out of bounds. I'm not quite sure what happened because the play was out of bounds. They forced a runoff on the Panthers towards the end of the first half. But that being beside the point, they do get Adam Thielen back. That was the thankful part that I'm mentioning here.
And that Sanders is okay. He was brought to a hospital with a neck injury, but they said he's out of the hospital, has movement, and that's great to hear.
And good for him. But again, an undermanned team led by Bryce Young, who was very, very good against Spags today. A lot of fadeaway passes in the face of the blitz. They got the 2-point conversion as Chuba Hubbard goes in after he forces a second try on that because Bryce keeps the play alive, throws a pass that gets called for pass interference. Then they come back and give it to Chuba there. But a minute, 56 seconds with number 15 on the other side. The Panthers secondary goes back to not making a play. And the second team just allows Patrick Mahomes to go on a 30-plus yard run down the sideline late in the game for some reason.
Yeah, let's hear that. Patrick setting us up perfectly. Once again, he's a host.
Mahomes, 1st and 10. Steps up into the pocket, being chased. But now he's going to scramble to the near side. 50, cuts inside, 45, 40, 35. Mahomes at the sideline, out of bounds with one of the longest runs in his career, down to the Carolina 22-yard line.
That was awesome. 5 runs for 60 yards in this game. He's had more rushing value this season than any season of his career because they've needed it, and that was a big spot. That was the fastest I've seen him look in a while. Like, I do want to ask you, Patrick, because you watched this game the closest. I was begging. I even sent out a social clip about it. Can you give me a blowout? That didn't happen. But can you give me some fun? Can you give me some offensive fireworks? Now, on one hand, you look, they only had 8 possessions, and they scored 30 points. It's tough for me to say they didn't deliver there, but they also didn't have many big plays. It's like all these long, slow drives. It's 27 first downs, but only 391 yards. Did they deliver on what I asked? Did they come through?
There was the big blown coverage to Noah Gray. There was a nice ball to Nuke Hopkins that he was able to force a pass interference call on. But ultimately, a lot of what you saw throughout the game from the Carolina Panthers defense and the Chiefs offense was defenders dropping back into deep zones and watching Patrick Mahomes. And then late in the game, Patrick Mahomes just decides, yeah, I'm gonna run here because you guys are just standing back there looking at me.
Why are we dropping into deep zones? It's not 2019. This is the boa constrictor Chiefs. They don't go deep. They go deep once a game, maybe twice, and Xavier Worthy either doesn't catch it, Mahomes misses him, or he catches it and he steps out of bounds before he gets both feet in. What are you doing, Carolina? This is a winnable game. Bryce is playing well. Why are you taking that defensive approach? Come on. Shame on you.
Yeah.
I don't think they have the dudes. I don't think they feel comfortable with the dudes that they have back there to be more aggressive.
Well, the most surprising thing of the day is that the Panthers had 8 quarterback hits and 5 sacks on Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
If I wanted to be a Chiefs hater and I would compare them a little bit to a team during the Patriots dynasty, and this is a little extra. I don't think it's quite this bad. It's not going to be this bad, but it'd be the 2019 Patriots, which never were really an 8-0 team. They never. A lot of that team, they ended up taking on water down the stretch. I don't think the Chiefs are going to do that, but I do think they have an increasing amount of problems for this team that do not look like a 10-1 team. The offensive line, now it's a couple weeks of the defense. We'll see if that sticks, and the lack of explosion on offense. Just, it just might not be their year, but maybe they'll just crank it up at the end. I actually think they're getting a little tired of it. Like the weight of it all is getting to them. Let's listen to Patrick Mahomes after the game.
You want to have some blowouts. You want to be a little calmer in the fourth quarter. But I've always said it can be a good thing as you get to the playoffs and later in the season. Just knowing that you've been in those moments before, and knowing how to kind of attack it, but play by play, not making it too big of a moment. But no, I mean, I would say this more than anybody. I would love to win a game, not by the very last play.
He's gotten used to it, and they are so good at doing that. They have won 13 straight one-score games. That is one away from the all-time NFL record. Before moving on, let's show that next-gen spray chart of Bryce Young, and let's hear about his day against a really good defense. I love seeing that he's pushing the ball and completing passes all over the field. It's not all right near the line of scrimmage. It's a lot of +10 intermediate throws, a few down the field against the blitz. His numbers against the blitz, Patrick, were fantastic.
No, and they were. And then we talk about the injuries, right? So that's with David Moore getting 10 of those targets. Adam Thielen gets 4. Xavier Legette has 6 of them, including one where Xavier Legette did the Xavier Worthy thing, did the receiver that we were mentioning earlier for the
Ashton
Dulin thing, where he doesn't make the play along the sideline but has the space to do so, where you turn the clock back a few weeks and Bryce Young is completely non-viable, right? This is not a quarterback that's ever going to amount to anything in the NFL. And then we see moments like this, which are kind of reminiscent to late season last year, where Bryce had solid starts, including that game against Green Bay late where he throws for 300 yards. Here it's 263, and not to stand or to cape for the guy, but just to watch and consider the way that we evaluate young quarterbacks in the league, to perhaps pick different criteria before we make declarative statements about the long-term viability of any quarterback. This performance by Bryce Young, again in a loss, right? But a loss in which he tied the game in the final moments over against one of the best quarterbacks we've ever.
Yeah, I said the key for him right now is just being able to do it consistently. That his games before the bye showed he can do it, because they have absolutely changed this offense around. I give Canales credit, but I give Bryce Young the most credit, and he is changing his career now, because if he can continue this type of play down the stretch, he will be their starter next year, and they will really have something to build off. It is 11 for 14 for 135 yards and a touchdown against the blitz, and hit 9 throws over 10 air yards today. So like that, I mean, not saying he's Anthony Richardson quite yet, but he was pushing the ball down the field. You know who isn't doing that too much lately is Tua Tagovailoa, but my God, is he playing quarterback well. After the break, we are going to hear from the man in Miami.
Second and 8 for Miami's offense from the 23 following the turnover. Right, the running back. Back to him, get it to Waddle. Waddle on the run! Touchdown, Miami. What a run by Waddle.
That's what you do when somebody turns the ball over. You go down and you score.
Dolphins did a lot of that on Sunday. Jimmy Cefalo and Joe Rose for WBGG. Jalen Waddle's 23-yard touchdown, part of a 34-15 victory for the Dolphins. One thing I really respect about this Dolphins team lately, Nick, is they're not messing around. It's one-sided. They're winning the game early. They're keeping it going, and they're letting no doubt who's the better team here.
Yeah, and the final score of 34-15, it wasn't even that close, guys. It was 31-0 late third. It was 24-0 just before halftime. The Patriots had one drive of relevance, and then the Dolphins just took them behind the woodshed. I mean, just pass after pass. Jalen Waddle hooking up with Tua Tagovailoa. They're racking up 144 yards. The offense looked the closest it's looked to the previous versions of the Dolphins offense.
Okay.
2023, 2022, that it has all year. And I know it's the Patriots. I know it's not a great measuring stick or a litmus test, but it was the first time after seeing them take everything underneath in the week, the week prior. Now they're opening it up, and Tua's dropping back and dropping dimes, intermediate level. He's looking deep a couple times. He's got easy touchdown passes to Devon Achane. Everything worked for them. Don't look at it as a measuring stick again because it's the Patriots, but it is a very encouraging sign for a team that at 5-6 needs to become this type of offense. First time I've seen it all year. Great day for them.
Okay, I didn't want to go too crazy because I had checked out like the ADOT for this game, and it was still only 5.6 yards for Tua, but it's good to hear that he did have a few more throws down the field, and he's getting rid of the ball so quickly, 2.34 average time to throw, and some of those do go down the field. They're just tough to deal with. Waddle, according to Mike McDaniel, has made a lot of progress this year, even though he hasn't been getting as many targets, so it's nice to see that rewarded. 8 for 144 and a touchdown. Jonnu Smith has another big day. Jonnu Smith, revenge game, and he is a big...
He's on fire.
He's a big part of their offense because they use so much 12 personnel, which is with 2 tight ends on the field, and he's really turned into their third down, middle of the field, third receiver that they used to try to get out of a wide receiver, but he's really turned into that player for them.
Yeah, he absolutely has. It's really what it's been, is run after catch and situational playmaking. Like in the red zone, they love to go to him in a number of different ways, whether it could be a little dump off screen or it's something where it's a quick pass. Like he's a weapon, and he can be a weapon beyond that. He had that long touchdown catch last week where he caught the ball and nobody was there and he ran off to the end zone for a touchdown. This has kind of been who he's been. This is who he was supposed to be when he signed with the Patriots after he left Tennessee, and he never really became that guy. And he's really filling that void that they needed at tight end since they basically let Mike Gesicki walk, and he never quite filled that void anyway for them. So this is, he's kind of like a Gerald Everett comp, I think, but more productive, obviously, than Everett's been in his last couple stops. And it's really helped the rest of their offense flourish because Tua, like you said, the ADOT is not super deep, right? But at the same time, you have so many different options beyond the receivers. Like we're not seeing them hit Tyreek for 50-yard bombs right now, right? But because you have the tight end involved, you can then survey the entire field. You have many different options, and it's worked out better for them. And again, it's only the Patriots, but if they are going to go on a run,
the Patriots have been competitive the last few weeks. This is the best anyone's handled the Patriots in a while.
Yeah, and it wasn't even close, as you guys mentioned. And I think the overall the big difference, other than Tua being there and them being allowed to run this offense that we've seen for the past few years, is it's always putting defenders in conflict. And the interesting conflict that I saw today was Christian Gonzalez being in a zone and leaving Tyreek Hill to go to Jonnu Smith. And ultimately the ball gets to Tyreek Hill, and I'm like, this is the world we're in 2024, where Tyreek Hill is having coverage drawn away from him by Jonnu Smith.
Wow.
But it's just the kind of bind that this offense can be. And when everybody's making plays, when Achane's out wide, Jalen Waddle has his best game all season long. That comes today where I was wondering what the injury concerns were. I'm going and looking at Jalen Waddle's next-gen stats performance to see if the speed drops off. No real difference in that capacity today, just having the production to go with it, with Achane and Jonnu Smith and Waddle all operating around the line of scrimmage very well. There's just too much to deal with if you can't get pressure on Tua.
We don't have a quarterback island meeting until a week from Tuesday, where because of the Thanksgiving week, the schedule's a little different, just in case you guys were curious. But I'll just put it out there now. I mean, Tua needs to be on that island unless something crazy changes. He is playing quarterback at an extremely high level. McDaniel thinks he's taken a big step too since coming off that injury. I agree. I think that he's playing the best football of his entire career. And now the defense, we had Anthony Weaver on the show, and we talked about like that front that they have. They're getting it done, not just with Sealer and Calais Campbell. Chop Robinson has been killing it in terms of their pass rush win rate. He had 1.5 sacks today, a bunch of quarterback hits. And I know that the offensive line for the Patriots isn't great, but the game slowing down for the quarterback and the defense coming along. This is a dangerous team, even at 5-6. I'd feel better about them in the NFC, but they have a really interesting Thanksgiving game, Shook. And if you can get the defense married up to the offense, I think they can beat anyone, including the Packers.
Yeah, and Chop, I think, is going to be a huge part of it. He's got 3.5 sacks over his last 4 games. It seems like you said, the game is slowing down for him. He had 8 pressures today on 26 pass rushes. He had the 5th highest pressure rate by any player in a game this season. That is the opposite of hitting the rookie wall. That is somebody finally settling in and coming through in a big spot because, remember, they lost Jalen Phillips to injury again. He's got to be in there and make a difference. Him, Sealer, and even Emmanuel Ogbah on the opposite side. You got Calais Campbell as well. That's kind of a sneaky, interesting front. And if they can tie that together, then, again, they can go on that run.
Any concerns about Drake May in this performance? I was hearing some buzz. He played well in the second half, but in general, this team sounded like they were a mess.
It was garbage time stuff for him. The first drive was good. Like, he looked like he has for the last month. He's going to be the guy. Like, he's fine. He's playing on an island. Speaking of quarterback island, he's playing on an island. Like, he's just not being supported. He had no time to throw for much of this game. It was just a really rough go for the entire offense, not just him. They didn't run the ball well until the second half. They didn't do anything well until the second half when the game was already out of hand. Not concerned about him. Just a bummer that you don't get to see him make some highlight plays like we have in recent weeks.
Yeah, and I want to see Gerard Mayo show some consistency out of his defense as a coach. I think they've underperformed more on defense than on offense this year, which I would not have expected coming into the season. I know there's been a lot of injuries, but a lot of sloppy play, giving up a lot of big plays. They are at 3-9. The Dolphins have won 3 straight. It's almost more annoying how unprepared Mike McDaniel had his team for the backup quarterback situation. Because this is absolutely a playoff team when Tua is on the field. And hell, they might get there, but it's going to be tougher because those Broncos, they're not going away. Let's go to Vegas.
First and goal, Denver at the 2. They bring Mims in motion. Nix, design roll to the right, throws back in the end zone. Pass caught. Cortland Sutton, touchdown Denver. Beat DeCamerion Richardson. Sutton, his 2nd touchdown reception of the game, his 5th of the season. And with 5:30 left in the 4th, it's now Denver 25, Las Vegas 16.
Cortland Sutton is an outstanding football player, a receiver, a catcher of the football.
Yes.
This man is excellent at his craft. Our friend Chris Wessling recognized it right away that this Cortland Sutton is going to be one of the best receivers in the league, and he had that injury, and it's so great to see him have this second life a little bit with Russ, and now it's happening for him with Bo Nix. 29-19. That was Dave Logan, KOA. Broncos fall behind early, Patrick, but they did what good teams do. They just kept climbing back, and they end up winning somewhat comfortably.
Yes, comfortably, and erasing the Raiders really in the second half where they go into the break down. They only had those 4 possessions. The Raiders had long, slow, drawn-out possessions. They limit the Broncos to field goals. But then in the second half, that Broncos defense really kicks things in. Gardner Minshew is hit, going to be out for the remainder of the season, where he goes down on his non-throwing shoulder. It's a broken collarbone. Tough to see.
Man.
That happened for Gardner Minshew, who played well in spots in this game. Desmond Ridder comes in, immediately turns the ball over. There was, but over on the other side, Max Crosby played well. Had some tackles for losses. He got a sack of Bo Nix, but really just a rookie quarterback and a coach and a play caller who trusts him. They didn't stray from the game plan at all. Not a lot of rushing to speak of.
No.
Phil McLaughlin led the team with 44 yards, but Sean Payton trusts Bo Nix to make plays, and make them he did with the aforementioned Cortland Sutton. Those 2 touchdowns, including the one that we heard there at the start. Just a good division win, pulling away from a team that they're better than.
No, he just hates fantasy owners. Although I guess it wasn't his fault that Javonte Williams went -2 yards on 8 carries. That's a rough one. 2 catches for 6 yards. Estime goes for 15 yards. Yeah, like nothing on the ground, and that they find a way to win. And that throw to Nix, from Nix to Sutton, he's really trusting his receivers. He doesn't look as good when he's under pressure, what rookie quarterbacks do. But Sutton, 8 for 97, and those 2 touchdowns. And Devon Vele's turning into a real 2. Sean Payton, man, I don't know if when people say, well, he should be in the mix for Coach of the Year, sometimes I don't know what that means because Coach of the Year, you can only vote for one guy.
Right.
So I don't think he's in the mix to be one guy. But if you were voting 3 guys, he's in the mix to be one of the 3 guys maybe. It's really impressive, Nick, what they're doing. And he said something very smart, I think, after the game. Not that I need to tell him he's smart. He said even the elite teams, they probably only really have it like 13, 14 times a year. And what he was saying there is that they maybe didn't totally have it today. But that the elite teams, the good teams, they find ways to maybe win on the days where they don't really have it. And maybe to his eye, they didn't totally have it for a chunk of this game. And then they got themselves together and they got a really important win. They're all going to be big now. They're 7-5.
Yeah, they take care of business against a divisional opponent. I mean, that's a big thing. There's many times in many games, we just saw it twice this week, where the last place team in the division beats the first place team in a division in a game that they shouldn't win. Tennessee beating Houston and Cleveland beating Baltimore, and yet Denver doesn't fall victim to that, and that speaks to the job that Sean Payton has done, but especially what he's done with Bo Nix. And I sound like a broken record at this point, but watching the way that they use him it invigorates me, because it gives me faith that coaches can coach to the strengths of their personnel instead of trying to fit the personnel into their scheme. And that's exactly what he's done with all of these young guys. Like Troy Franklin's been up and down, but he's still part of the offense. Devon Vele is really coming on strong. And of course you have Cortland Sutton. The running game hasn't been there kind of for weeks, really, if you think about it, especially Javonte Williams. And yet they're still winning football games. They have a defense that's very good. We already know that. I'm very impressed. I would definitely put him in my top. We should vote for like nominees, like the Heisman. Give us like finalists.
Right. They do bring 3 coaches there, but they just do it based on who had the most votes. And it's always a little weird because sometimes it's like a guy who didn't have any votes. So they should make it like MVP, where you put a ballot of 3 guys for every position, because it's just more exciting and more people get a little pop. And if Bo Nix is now going like 3 for 5 on throws over 20 yards, air yards, like he gets the credit and Sean Payton gets a little credit. This team's not going away, Patrick. And that's why we had him as our survivor pick. How about that?
Yes, and we do. Just that, survive on a late push, trying to figure things out, trying to hold through the task given to us by the listeners of this esteemed show, as well as the viewers over on YouTube.
We haven't missed one since week 2 or whatever.
And that's following every rule. Not picking the same team multiple times. We're going to accomplish the task ahead of us.
Although I will say the team you really wanted to pick as a survivor was the Bucs, and they sweated it even less. But either way, they got the W, just like the Broncos. Before we move on to Sunday Night Football, we say goodbye to a man who has put more time in.
Oh, come on.
The desk than just about anyone, and who is going to be celebrating his birthday by the time anyone is listening to this podcast. So happy birthday, Patrick Claybon.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks for the music, Eric.
Happy birthday. Somebody's known you for almost 10 years. I didn't know that tomorrow is your birthday, and that's on me.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
It's on me not to have given you anything.
Oh, it's okay.
Other than just like a 30-second little happy birthday, which is kind of the standard industry gift on shows. But I give it to you, and I hope you have a nice day. Anything planned for it other than taping Fantasy Live? Anything outside of work?
No, we were not able to corral our sitter who's out of town. So no, it's fine. I want to watch the game. I hope the Ravens,
good one.
The Ravens win on Monday. And my birthday present is the people that God has placed in my life. That includes all of you guys. I'm spoiled rotten, so thank you for the birthday wishes. This is great.
Well said. The host who can do it all, the birthday man, Lamar Jackson. I didn't get Patrick a birthday present. You better give him a birthday present. Let's go to SoFi.
It is 3rd down and 5. Barkley back in. Hurts in the pistol with Barkley behind him. Montebetti gives it to Barkley. He gives it to Barkley, who cuts outside. He's at the 40, the 50, the 40. He's going to go again. He's going to go again. Touchdown, Saquon Barkley. His all-time record, 72 yards.
How good is that guy? How good is this guy? His total now, 255 yards rushing on the night.
That is an all-time Eagles record.
Ooh, Merrill Reese and Mike Quick on WIP in Philadelphia, doing a lot of my work for me, telling me what the records are on the night. They also Broke a record 302 yards from scrimmage, Saquon Barkley. Man, it's like, which 70-yard rushing touchdown in the second half are we going to choose as our highlight? We had a couple options. The first play of the third quarter, and then the one that sealed it, 37-20. Eagles get it done. Another week, Nick, where they just leaned on the opponent and leaned on the opponent. They were actually trailing with under 2 minutes to go in the first half, 7-6. And by the end of the game, it just felt like, why did I think the Rams could even compete in this one? All these teams end up looking soft by the end of 60 minutes against these bruisers in Saquon Barkley.
You know, I don't... Actually, yes, I do revel in being able to say this, even if I've said it many times. It starts in the trenches, baby, and that is exactly where the Eagles won on both sides of the ball. I mean, we saw how often Matthew Stafford was under duress. Milton Williams having a couple of really nice snaps there in the second half. You know what Jalen Carter brings to the table, but really it's the offensive line of the Eagles that blocks it up so well that Saquon Barkley has a hole wide enough for 2 Mack trucks to run through. I mean, that was perfection when it comes to blocking, and they won the battle up front. They were able to put away the Rams with ease. This offense is humming. This defense is playing really well together. I hate to say it because I feel like I'm sounding hyperbolic, but I'm going to say it. The Eagles are one of the best teams in football, and they're going to be right there in Super Bowl contention.
Yeah, they're in the NFC, so 9-2, 7-game winning streak is not enough for the 1 seed. I guess it wouldn't be in the AFC either. The difference is, after Washington's loss on Sunday, they're up 3 in the loss column, and the division feels very much in their pocket, and they know they're gonna almost certainly be the 1 or the 2 seed. In some ways, you'd almost rather be the Eagles than the Lions, because the Lions have one team just 1 game back. You got another team a couple games back in the Packers, and so they really have more work to do to keep and to get that 1 seed. But that's talking down the road. Right now, what they are doing consistently and getting better each and every week is so impressive. I'm glad you mentioned the line play on both sides, because going into this game, I thought, what a big test for this Rams defensive line, which has been great all year. But they've mostly been great getting to the passer. And they had a couple decent pressures. Fisk had a big sack early in the first half, but the pressure rate on Hurts was not that high on his 22 passes. The key number to me is just 22. He's just not needing to throw the ball that much. He scrambled a few times, ended up rushing the ball 12 times if you count the kneel downs at the end. And in the running game, the Rams just held on for a while. If you actually look at the success rate and the run stuffs, the Eagles actually had a decent amount of negative runs in this game. They're pretty close between the two teams, but the difference is Kyren Williams never pops a big one. And at the end of the first half, you kind of felt like Saquon, oh man, he almost broke that for 30, but he got 7. Oh, Saquon almost got a big one, but he got 13. And then literally the first play of the second half, he hits that long one. And after that, there's just no margin for error. The Rams offense would have needed to be perfect tonight. It was really the Eagles offense that was only stopped 1 time. I mean, there was a punt early, and other than that, it was the weird sequence at the end of the first half, which I guess they got stopped on downs. But other than that, that was it. You have to play almost perfect right now against this Eagles rushing attack.
Yeah, and to take it back to the line play, because I think while Saquon's having a career year and everything else, they are hand in hand. One does not happen without the other. And if you look at this starting 5, I have to tip my cap again to Howie Roseman, because let's go left to right. Jordan Mailata, they get him to the International Player Program. You got Landon Dickerson, that's a former draft investment who was a top guard coming out of his class. Cam Jurgens, who they drafted 2-3 years ago to replace Jason Kelce. Who they had Jason Kelce tell them to draft, who's been killing it. Then you go to the right guard. You got Mekhi Becton. This is the one. We all know what Lane Johnson is. I'm not going to spend any time on him. Mekhi Becton, the guy that we all said, oh, look at the athleticism at the draft. Look at his 40 time. That's incredible for somebody that size to move like that. He plays tackle. He gets hurt multiple times. His career in New York never works. They move him to guard. He might be one of the biggest guards outside of Daniel Faalele in NFL history, and he's moving, baby. They can pull him. They pulled him on that play for Saquon on that last touchdown run. This is one of the best starting fives in the NFL. They can do everything that you ask them to do. Every blocking scheme and approach is available to them. You have a home run hitter at running back in Saquon Barkley. You have an experienced quarterback who is a dynamic threat in Jalen Hurts. And oh, by the way, you also have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith when he's available in that receiving core as well. It's one of the more complete offenses in the NFL. But again, it starts up front. And that's why I think every team, like I just was sitting back dreaming of like Lions, Eagles, NFC Championship game, war. Let's go.
Yes, that would be an awesome game. We have a long time until we get there. I'm glad you mentioned A.J. Brown. I keep saying that he's the most valuable wide receiver, I believe, to his team in the entire NFL. I think tonight's matchup between him and Puka, they're very similar. A.J. Brown goes 6 for 109, and the Rams didn't really have much of an answer for him late in the first half, and now he's healthy enough where he's getting a lot of yards after the catch, so he was bodying some of the smaller Rams defensive backs, but then also picking up an extra 10 to 15. He goes 6 for 109, and their next leading receiver, other than Saquon, who is becoming a bigger part of the passing game too. Their next leading receiver was Goddard, 4 for 19. I mean, they don't really have secondary receivers when Devontae Smith is out like tonight, and maybe that could be a bit of an issue. Goddard's fine. They didn't need him tonight, but it just shows what a dominant player A.J. Brown is. Very similar on the other side. Puka Nacua goes 9 for 117, and I don't even think he's 100% healthy. And until they found Kupp for a garbage time touchdown with about a minute left, the numbers were very similar, where there was no other Rams receiver anywhere over 30 yards. And that's where I stand with the Rams, which is they're a feisty, fun defense, but they're going to get pushed around against like the best teams, like an Eagles or a Lions. They're just not in that class. Maybe they're average, slightly above average overall. Offensively, they're good, but they're not great like they have been sometimes in the Stafford era. They're good, and they played a really tough Eagles defense, but the injury at right tackle where they haven't gotten Rob Havenstein back, there's a lot of pressure on the right side. Brandon Graham is playing like a man 10 years younger all season, so he's creating a lot of pressure. And then Milton Williams, who you mentioned, and Jalen Carter on the inside, matching up against Limmer and these younger or just not great guards for the Rams. There were too many holes for Matthew Stafford to fill there, and Kyron Williams fumbles twice in the game, once loses it in the red zone. You have to almost be perfect against this Eagles team, and just like a few too many flaws. I don't think the Rams are done by any means in this NFC West at 5-6, but I also do think when I heard Chris Collinsworth say at the end of the game, Sean McVay might not be that surprised by what's going on here. I'm like, wow. Did he have a very realistic sit-down with McVay before the game that, look, we maybe don't match up. We're going to have to play our perfect game to beat this team. He kind of knows they are not at a true contention level, and it would be foolish to think otherwise. And you know who agrees with them? All the Eagles fans at SoFi tonight. That was next level, man. Oh, my God.
We know how LA games can be. Even the Rams, they fill out their stadium more than Chargers fans do. But there are a lot of Eagles fans in LA, I'll tell you that. If you look at the remaining schedule for the Rams, though, I agree. They're not at that true contention status, but they could definitely, they're obviously still in this NFC West race. And, they play at the Saints. They come home against the Bills, at Niners, at Jets, home against Cardinals and Seahawks. So you get 2 division games in your last 2 and 3 in your last 4. It's still a pretty workable schedule. I could see them figuring it out, and even if they split those, they finish 8-9, 9-8. You might have an outside shot.
They got a chance, but when you have a game like the Bills, you're going to have one that people don't see coming, an upset win, and they just got smoked by a true, real deal contender. Can they really beat the Bills? If you can't, then you're up to 7 losses, and the Seahawks, the Cardinals, we'll see. It's going to come down to the end, but I think we just showed the separation there. And yeah, Jordan Rodriguez, who was there, said she hasn't heard the crowd quite like that maybe for a road team. They actually were doing an in-game segment down 27-14 where they show misplaced fans. I've seen this one where they show the jerseys of random fans in the crowd of not the teams that are at the game or whatever, and it's just kind of funny. And sometimes they were showing Rams, they showed a Rams person, and the entire Eagles crowd is booing the hell out of Rams fans. So that's a tough spot for the Rams on Sunday night. Just ultimately not good enough on either line.
and the Eagles are getting it done. 7 straight victories. Shooky, it was a pleasure. We will be back on Monday night. Fun game. I think the Chargers have a better chance, at least, to pull the upset as an LA underdog on Monday night. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. And speaking of most valuable receivers, most valuable podcast host, Gregg Rosenthal.
I mean, I don't know where you're getting that, but
most effective and efficient runner, Josh Allen.
Definitely not efficient. Frequent podcast host for sure. We will be back again to recap that Ravens-Chargers game. Really looking forward to that. Man, when Saquon Barkley is breaking records, he already has his all-time mark for rushing yards in a season. You know football is back. We'll see you Monday night.